Why are eggs so expensive right now? Oh my gosh, I hear this all the time. So I wanted to clear it up. We're getting started right now. So you know me, I always am about research and the economic factor and a whole lot of other things. And literally, if I hear one more person blame Donald Trump, because frankly, here's the thing is, I don't care what side of the aisle you ever want to be on. I'm always about what's happening with the economy. You can peruse this channel and see how I've explained how things have happened throughout the world, throughout time, how the economy works, even when we had our crazy unicorn years in 2020, and I gave you all the information of how we got to where we were, how your wallet is where it is, and there's some more videos coming up about that as well. But here's what I want to say. A couple of things. The biggest issue that's causing the eggs to be expensive is the culling. And what that means is the killing of the chickens, the fowl. Basically, there's turkeys involved in all of that. But for purposes of me with this conversation, I'm going to say the word hens because that's the easiest thing for you to reference. Just know that those numbers will include because the fowl is being affected this way. What's really fascinating to me is that number one, that this is apparently, it's a process that's been ongoing or a strategy that our government has used to deal with infected influenza for these birds. What's interesting is I did a video recently about fact check your stuff and using AI, which I still believe in, but I also know it's very fascinating is because I have hit a roadblock for a day now trying to get the exact information about how many birds have been culled. What I can tell you is that there's a lump sum, and then there's some information about, very fascinatingly, that the majority of it happened right before Donald Trump took office. First of all, this outbreak started in 2022, okay? So we really only have this 2-year period that this has been happening. And since 2022, 166 million hens have been culled. And there's no breakdown, which I find interesting that I keep asking for this. And, I probably could go to some various websites, USDA and all of that, but I'm not sure that I can because when you ask a question of AI, it's searching the internet. So why this information is not available to be broken down this way, that I find interesting, number one. Number two, 166 million birds have been killed, just killed. Now, this is just a personal opinion, and I know you may disagree with me, and please put it in the chat because I love to hear other people's opinions. Honest to goodness, I really do. But what's fascinating is that 166 million have been killed from 2022 to 2024. A little over a third, so that's not quite a majority, but it's close to half, were culled in December of 2024 and in January of 2025. I asked for the breakdown of how many were culled prior to January 20th, 2025. That number wasn't exactly available. But here's the thing is what I do know is that when we live in an economy, there's always a lagging or a leading indicator. And if you understand anything about economics, especially on a very large scale, it's important to note that things don't happen immediately in a vacuum. They just don't. So if you look at this process, whether it be the economy that is being repaired from where we were for the past 4 years of inflation, or you look back, as I said, to the 2020s, talking about what led up to the unicorn years with the shortage of inventory on housing and all of those things, or even back to 2008 when we got ourselves into a bad situation. Those things don't happen in a vacuum. They don't happen overnight. There are things that lead up to it that are leading indicators that share with you, if you're paying attention, what's about to happen. So somebody could have noticed this, I don't know, back in 2022, but interestingly, 40 plus million birds were culled in December of 2024 and another 20 million in January. That's over a third of all the culling. Now, I do have a part of me that says, what if we had done that with COVID, right? These are just chickens, right? They're just animals. They don't have any consciousness. The people that are PETA and vegans should be going out of their ever-loving minds right now. Instead of worrying about egg prices, let's talk about what's really going on. What's really going on is that, interestingly enough, so I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist. I just want to look at the actual things that have happened and go, like a Scooby-Doo moment. What is happening here? So if 60 million plus birds were culled in the last days of, I don't know, the Biden administration, when there were some other things, money was flying out the door, wouldn't that set up a situation exactly where we are right now? Because if you take away a large percentage, and it could be up to 25%, depending on numbers, because frankly, the numbers aren't there. That's the part I'm fascinated by, is that I would like to know exactly the dates of culling, when this started, what other preventative measures were taken, blah, blah, blah. I can't find it. If you know it, please put it in the chat, because I think it's really important. But if almost 25% over this period of time, especially in this last few months, is culled, right, out of the population, it's supply and demand, folks. I talk about it all the time. Supply and demand. An undersupply and an overdemand makes prices go up, and reverse, prices go down. So what I do know is that I did a little bit more research that the USDA's got a plan to actually start to quarantine these birds. And part of the issue is as well, so, it's a layered thing. It isn't just a simple, egg prices are up. Let's look at why egg prices are up, and let's look at what you can do in the interim. Because we live in Wichita Falls, and this is a Wichita Falls channel, there are so many people that have farm fresh eggs here. So I would start buying them, and honestly, I haven't seen a huge increase in them because they're still just producing eggs. Maybe they'll change or whatever. But the problem is that we in the United States, and I've watched this over decades, is that these chicken raising, I don't even want to call them farms because that would indicate that there's something nice going on. It's really a horrific place. If you've ever been to a chicken raising facility, you'll never eat eggs again. And that's why I'm not ever gonna go, but I know about them. When you see cage free, that's a chicken that supposedly wasn't raised in a cage. Literally, these hens, if they're raised in a cage, their feet get all distorted because they're hanging onto those cages. It is not a pretty environment. I love eggs because I love eggs. And the fact is that I always use cage-free or organic because I'm willing to pay actually for the way that that chicken was raised that's going to go into my body. So think about the things that are going on. There's a conversation out there about vaccinating the chickens. Well, okay, I'm an anti-vaxxer, so I'll just put that out there. Y'all can just jump on that one. But the thing is I don't want that in my food, and I don't want hormones. So I use organic meats, which I don't usually eat red meat, but I use organic meats because I don't want those hormones that I ingest into my body. So that's just a personal preference. That doesn't mean that has anything to do with you and the cost of eggs. But the fact is that if we start vaccinating the chickens, that also is into our food supply. So there's all kinds of ways to look at this. I'm not here to say what the exact answer is, but I'm also here to say, let's begin to look at this, have a dialogue about it. We have a government that is breaking things down in a very interesting way. And when you decide that you're going to point a finger and say egg prices are a result of this brand new administration that took off on January 20th, and in the last 2 years, that 166 million chickens, hens, fowl, birds have been culled, and over a third of them were culled at the very end of the Biden administration, that gives me pause. I'm not saying that anything did happen, but I'm also saying, think about why that is. And given the fact that that happened, right? Egg prices have gone exponentially higher. Everybody noticed it, right? Starting about January. Why didn't anybody notice it before? Well, because all that had happened right before the egg prices went up. When you don't have enough chickens, you don't have enough eggs, you have higher prices. Boom, end of discussion. Now, what do you do about it? I believe we should stop culling the chickens, just like we shouldn't have killed people that were that had COVID. It's like, what? That's crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. That's my opinion. Listen, I get to have one, just like you do. Put it in the chat if you disagree. But as far as Wichita Falls is concerned, here's my suggestion, is that there's plenty of people go on my group, Spark of the Falls, and people are selling farm-raised eggs here that are absolutely delicious. When you see a chicken farm, or whatever we're calling those, there's so many of them, and then literally they're packed in like sardines. There was one article, I didn't do a lot of research on it, but in Canada, their chicken farms are not humongous and like factories like ours. You can almost look at it like New York versus Wichita Falls when we had COVID. New York was off the charts with incidences of COVID. Why? Well, my theory is that they're too closely packed together. And guess what? People are all in the subway, right? So they're all together. Imagine all these little chickens. Ew, they're all together. They're spreading it like wildfire. You have a more expansive community, say for instance, Wichita Falls. We're not packed together, right? So the incidence of COVID, the percentage of COVID was different than it was in New York. So same thing applies with these chickens. There was an article about Canada having smaller farms. So why we have this ability here locally is we're a little more rural community. We have people with smaller farms. The chickens are healthy as all get out. So as far as Wichita Falls is concerned, this is a great place to be during this crisis because number one, you can get good eggs and we have healthier chickens. So I know that was a lot. And what I want you to do is begin to think about what's happening in the world. Stop listening to the media. Oh, I can't even say that enough. I said it for, I don't know, however many years I've had this channel. Stop listening to the media. Stop listening to the sound bites that are absolutely not true. Go research and figure out what's going on, number one, for yourself, but second of all, what can you do about it? How can you make your life better? How can you begin to impact what's happening in this global community? Because at the end of the day, it starts locally, and then you can begin to help in a different way. For now, as I said, being in Wichita Falls, we are so lucky because we have access to farm fresh eggs. Absolutely. And I do still buy eggs at the grocery store, and I'll pay $9 for an organic chicken egg because that I know is more likely to be healthier for me. That's all there is to it. And what I'm going to do in the next little while is some videos on how to live your healthiest life, because honest to goodness, we do so much to our bodies that we don't pay attention to. We're like numb from the neck down, just like, and trust me, I do it too. So I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I am saying that we need to be more conscious and aware of how we're showing up in our lives. So go do your own research. Although, like I said, I hit a brick wall about when did we start culling, how many were culled, how many died, and in what years. But bottom line here, this is why egg prices are so high today. 2022, we had outbreak of this avian bird flu, then culling began. When you start taking away the inventory of something, we saw it with the housing shortage in 2022. It's no different with birds. The reason egg prices are so high today is because we have culled, literally killed, murdered 166 million birds since 2022, and over a third of those were culled in December and the beginning of January of 2025. If you have a different opinion, put it in the chat because I love to hear other people's version of what's going on. Queen of Magic out.